That would be our digital cafe. For those of you who are just joining us, thank you for coming along. My name's Tim Schmidt. I'm here from the CND in Austin. We're going to talk about what stories are driving subscriptions, and this is specifically for digital editors and others who would be handling that kind of those kind of duties or responsibilities. And without further ado, I turn this over to our digital project manager, Summer Moore.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about maximizing the story for subscribers. So knowing your audience is the first step, giving feedback to the reporters to your newsroom, spotting a trending story or topic, and creating and adjusting your newsletters. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing is I wanted to introduce you guys to a new wiki that's got a bunch of reports. So Sherry, our data scientist, put together this awesome wiki that you'll get a link to this when you get your slides that you can go through. And there's a bunch of reports on there, including some video reports, some new stuff that will give you a bunch of new data that I know you love. But the thing I really wanted to point out was the Simplified Morning Report, which you guys all have access to now, has a few new pieces of info, specifically looking at user loyalty content and segments. So we're going to talk about what specific topics and headlines are turning people into subscribers on November 29th. But today I want to take kind of a wider view on what you can be doing from sort of a digital editing. So arm yourself with data is always the first thing. So making sure that you're going into that report. You can download a CSV with as much data as you want from, big periods or short periods if you wanted to do a week, a month, whatever. But taking a look at what your brand lovers, which is what we're calling people that use or that look at more than 14 stories a month, look at what they're reading. Look at the headlines. Find out what the trends are. Try and figure out like any specific topics that they're really into. That's super important. Grabbing all the data you can is how we move forward. So this is the three segments that we are putting readers into, and this is pulled from from Google. Google's doing a Google News initiative. Is who we're working for on this. So they're using casual readers, which is people that get one story a month, loyal readers, which is 2 to 14, and then brand lovers are over 14. These are likely your subscribers, but just keep in mind that this is not connected to piano data right now. But if they're reading more than 14 stories a month, they're likely past the paywall at that point. So you have access to what's working and what's driving loyal users and who's writing what. So in this report, in the Simplified Morning Report, you've got author reports that you can grab. You've got sources that you can grab. You've got stories that you can grab. All of this is really good to have to give feedback to your editors and reporters. Specifically, and I know everybody's really interested in this right now, so specifically what are the stories that are getting people to come back, right? So what are the similarities between your casual, your loyal, and your brand lovers? What are the stories that everybody's reading? And what are the stories that only your casual readers are reading? And what are the stories that only your loyal readers are reading? All of that information is super important. And then you can give feedback to your reporters. You could say, our subscribers seem to really like this beat, so maybe we should think about doing a little bit more of this. So I would really recommend creating a report that everyone in your newsroom can use, highlighting trends, highlighting stories that did particularly well with your loyal readers and brand lovers. Those are the people that are really on the cusp, right? You want to turn as many loyal readers into brand lovers that you can. And so making sure that you're creating a report so that the whole newsroom knows where everybody stands on that is really important.
And some folks will come out and say, I'm in a 6-person newsroom or I'm in an 8-person newsroom, and I don't know if I have time for this. I would contend that it's almost more important when you're in those small to mid-sized newsrooms to know exactly what's working, because that's, as we're trying to move forward and weed out things or change the way we do things and cover things, that's almost more important, isn't it, to know exactly what is so that we're devoting the most resources that we can to that?
Absolutely. Okay, so how are we spotting trending stories? Making sure that everybody's watching live analytics. You can do this in Google Analytics. You can do this in Parse.ly. It's so important to have live analytics somewhere in your newsroom where people can see. Even if you don't have a TV, make sure your reporters have access to it and can see it somewhere. So in Google Analytics, which is what I've shown right here, you can see real time. Over here on the left-hand side, you go under real time and then overview, and this will give you access to what's going on right now. Okay? And then in Parse.ly, it's just your home page, but you can always tell what's going on right now. So also paying attention to what sections and tags are getting the most eyeballs. So what taxos are doing well, and then adding tags. So let's say that you're in Columbus and you had the Urban Meyer thing going on. Making sure that you've got a tag that says Urban Meyer so that you can go into your Google Analytics or your Parse.ly report and look at that tag specifically and see how that tag is doing. So creating your own tags, you don't have to necessarily create a taxo, but just having your own tag is something that can help you sort of analyze your own data. CrowdTangle. We have talked about CrowdTangle before, but this is so important to spot a trending story, especially if it's in your newsroom, yes. If it's your story, awesome. That is definitely what we want. But this is such a good tool to see what's trending outside of your newsroom, but in your community as well. So making sure that you're setting up those alerts for yourself in your newsroom. So if something is trending really high in your community, you can, let everybody know. Also creating lists for your reporters. We've got a training that CrowdTangle is going to do for us on December 6th. So make sure you sign up for that because that's going to be really helpful, I think.
One of the things, again, going back to that mid-sized newsroom that I notice is something will trend in one of our communities, and it's a concert's announced or something, there's someone passes. It's so important that these folks jump on that story quickly and get the original traffic right, even in a small newsroom, because I think part of the problem is we're going to write a 20-inch story. Get 2 graphs up there.
Absolutely.
Get 2 graphs and start stealing some of the numbers instead of they've already passed you by. That's one of the issues that we're facing for sure.
Absolutely, and I would point to the one that the famous weather reporter that was headed down to Panama City.
Right. Sure.
That's a really good case for that, where somebody famous is coming down to your community. You don't have to write a big story about it. Just get a brief out, get it out on social. Yeah.
Just a quick story. So the Apalachicola Times, Dave Adlerstein, longtime editor, he and I had been chatting, and he told me that Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel was coming down. This was before Hurricane Michael. And I said, man, if I were you, I'd just get 2 or 3 graphs up right now and push that out through social. Now, he's a one-person operation. He's got a gazillion other things. But being able to do 2 or 3 paragraphs, that's possible, not a 20-inch story. Well, the numbers went crazy on that thing, and it was one of his biggest stories of the month. So,
and he was able to share that with the rest of
the group,
newsrooms around
Panama City and others, yes.
All right, so making sure that when you see a trending story, if it's not yours, if it's somebody else's, see if you can get that assigned or write something up real quick. SEO, SEO, SEO. So like Tim said, making sure that you're grabbing that search traffic really early. And then once you have it, share it widely and get it into a newsletter. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that's really important too, right? So we know that our more loyal users are coming in through email, and we'll talk more about that in the next training as well. But email is such an important retention tool, and it's such an important direct communication. It's not Facebook. It's not somebody else's. It's yours. So getting those really strong stories into a newsletter is vital. Let's talk about newsletters.
Kind of a great daily reminder too, right?
Yeah.
That we're here.
So this is a largely untapped audience retention source for us. This is a highly engaged user, and they're highly loyal. So becoming a part of someone's everyday experience is how you turn them into a subscriber, right? So making sure that we're capitalizing on that as much as we can. So when you're creating newsletters, you can get outside of the morning headlines. A lot of our properties just have morning headlines. Some other topics that do well for our properties are opinion, entertainment, things to do, sports, crime and public safety. So any of these things that you can pull from an RSS feed. So if you've got a taxo for it, we can create a newsletter for it. I would highly recommend setting up some of these things to start grabbing that audience. You're going to be starting from zero, so it's really important that you get that set up so you can start grabbing readers and then promote. And then curating newsletters. So knowing when they scrape for our morning daily headline newsletters, they're scraping at 5 a.m. So you know that. So if you want to make sure that your top story of the day is the top story on your newsletter, make sure it publishes at 4 or 4:30 in the morning. And then it can be like, your biggest story, and it should be your biggest story on your website when your morning readers wake up anyway. But just knowing that when it scrapes is really important. And then right now, for most of you, we're using 3 taxos, which is newsletter, top story, and carousel. We can change that to pull in whatever taxo you want. But using the newsletter-only taxo allows you to pick your best stories of the day and make sure it's a really nice curated newsletter for your readers the next day. All right, so paying attention to publish times in order to make the newsletter. If you decide to add an afternoon newsletter, understanding that scrapes at, I think it's 2 p.m., but I can let you know for sure. And then remember the SEO rules because headlines matter so much. Your first headline in your newsletter is going to be the subject line, and that is everything when it comes to open rate. So making sure that you have a really strong SEO headline on every single one of your stories, but especially that first one, is vital when it comes to newsletters. So what does this all mean? We're using these techniques to move casual readers toward brand lovers. So this is the funnel that I have here on the right. This is what we talked about in the last training, but this was a funnel I could find. But basically, we're sending casual readers, we're turning them into more interested, more loyal, converted, and then eventually to subscribers. So we want to grab as much sideways traffic as we can because the law of, math is
Sure.
the more people that see your stuff, the more the percentage of those will become subscribers. So more eyes equals more chances of people moving down the funnel towards subscription.
Getting back to newsletters really quickly, do you suggest looking at those reports and picking topics to put at the top of your newsletters if those are the things that are driving?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at your loyal reader segments and saying, you know what, these guys are reading a lot of business stories. Mm-hmm. Put together a business newsletter. Like I said, any taxo can be a newsletter, but if you want to create a newsletter, if you want to change your taxos, please put in a Zendesk ticket. That's how we can get it done. But like I said, we can do that easily for anyone. So look at your topics, look at your do journalism with impact topics, and think about what kind of newsletters you can do out of those. But yeah, Tim, that's a really good point. And we are at the end of our time, so thank you so much for joining us. Again, you will get this link to video and the link to slides. Please sign up for the Essentials coming up in 2 weeks where we are going to get into what content drives subscriptions, looking at Gatehouse data. And we're also going to have Sherry on who's going to talk about reporting and all of the great data that we can get for you. And I think that's it.
All important pieces. And by the way, if you have a question on anything that we went through, something that you're not sure about, please feel free to reach out to either Summer or myself. We are happy to answer any questions. We're happy to make sure that we get you in touch with the right folks. As I tell people all the time, we want to be your advocates here at the CND. So if there is something that you don't understand, no problem. We give a kind of high level here. We have a lot of folks from our bigger papers. But if you're someone at a small outfit that doesn't know what some of this means, please reach out and we'll make sure that we explain it and go through in a little more depth. So thank you, Summer. These will all be sent out to you by the end of the day, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks for joining, folks.
Thank you.
Have a good one.